Revolution was founded 11 years back on this very Earth Day, 22nd April 2010, and it is committed to restore our Earth through its various activities. CGR achieved 3.4 million saplings plantation as a mission across Telangana and Andhra Pradesh states in India, involving diverse stakeholders and especially children, the future generation, and adopted various models for successful implementation, and strived for conservation of Eastern Ghats by networking with researchers, academicians, policymakers, students, media, and various other stakeholders across the important 5 states in India, that is Andhra Pradesh, Telangana, Orissa, Tamil Nadu, and Karnataka. And this Eastern Ghats was less focused as it is fragmented, and various other ecological hotspots had been looked at. So we have focused on the conservation of this issue and conducted several national level conferences too. And former President of India, Sri Pranab Mukherjee, he was impressed with our documentation of the challenges and the solutions that we had done in the form of a book, that is Eastern Ghats Environment Outlook, and it was released by him. And we have started the Earth Center at Anmaspalli, Kartal, Hyderabad, to nurture leadership for restoring our Earth and achieve sustainable development. And our sustainable villages models is to start strengthening the grassroots for restoring Earth. And this particular international event today, and by networking with the experts here, we are looking the global networks to be established and communicate on the challenges that we have related mostly on environment and sustainable development goals, and share commonly the resources, and together we work for achieving the sustainable development goals. This is in brief about our CGR and our ambitions in the near future. And Professor K. Purushottam Reddy, he is a renowned environmentalist, and he is very acclaimed nationally, internationally for his work, untiring work for the right from the policies to grassroots level communities in creating awareness on all aspects related to environment, including the sustainable development goals. And with this, he could reach millions of people and create awareness and make them sensitized about the issues. And many policies were made because of his continuous work. And it also stopped some of the actions of the governments which could have jeopardized the environment. And he is also a mentor for many of us here in this group in the Council for Green Revolution, and he is a constant supporter for all our initiatives. Thank you very much, sir, and I welcome you to address all of us. Thank you very much.
So thank you, Dr. Sai Bhaskar Reddy, for the wonderful introduction. So, distinguished participants, we have international participants today, and very rightly so, because the subject itself is global. We are all gathered here to discuss about the plight of the planet Earth. Earth Day is basically a day devoted to think about the problems faced by the planet Earth, and also to come up with solutions. So we are all gathered here to give a healing touch to the planet Earth. I wish to focus for 2 or 3 minutes on the initiatives of both UN and citizens. United Nations has done tremendous work. There is no doubt about it. The way they organized the Stockholm Conference, Rio Conference, Paris Conference. And in addition to that, they had appointed the World Commission on Environment and Development. And a beautiful report, Our Common Future, was released, where sustainable development as a goal was defined. If we look at the kind of work that has been accomplished by the UN, right from the very many protocols that have been signed for the protection of global environment, I think it's a very big success for the UN. Coming to the citizens, yes, enlightened citizens, starting from Raquel Carson, then Dennis Meadows, who published that Limits to Growth book, and subsequently, in several countries, status of environment reports have been published. Monumental contribution has been made by the citizens in different countries, localities, in Africa, in Asia, in every other country of the world. And quite a few concerned citizens like, uh, you know, Senator Gaylord, and then you find them in UK, in Europe, in India. Then judges in India, Supreme Court judges like Krishna Iyer, Justice Bhagavati, remarkable judgments have come up. As a political scientist, what I see, there's a big lacune. On one side, United Nations as a global body, they did marvelous work. On the other side, citizens, responsible citizens, and the suffering and the toiling masses who are living at the cutting edge of human civilization, who are some of them are simply have to, continuously scratch the land to make a living. Extreme poverty, desertification, every ecosystem is under stress. And today, the topic is Earth Day, yes, but our focus should be on restoring the damaged ecosystems. So, how do we go about? As a political scientist, I realize our effort should be two-dimensional. One, we need to strengthen the United Nations, and for that, we should be demanding reforms. That is, United Nations should undergo reforms. If, of course, keeping their monumental work in mind, they have done a lot of contribution. But to ensure the implementation of their ideas, whatever has been achieved has to be complied with. To ensure the compliance of all the protocols entered into between the nations of the world, there should be a global body. Okay, we have United Nations, but then in its present form, it is not effective. So how do we go about? We have been demanding reforms in the UN, and I strongly suggest a few. Number one, for example, the United Nations Trusteeship Council. Earlier, they were focusing on a few topics, but now the agenda has to be increased, and it is time the Trusteeship Council focused on the common properties of the world. Common properties of the world. For example, the oceans, the North Pole, South Pole, and whatever common areas are there, they have to be taken care of. Right now, it appears as if the oceans are orphaned. People are simply dumping everything into the ocean, including the plastics, and it's already a serious issue, and it's going to be a major issue in the days to come. Although some of the very important areas are within the national boundaries, for example, the Amazon or the Himalayas. Himalayas may be between India, Tibet, China, Pakistan, and quite a few other Nepal and so on. But they are global heritages. They are most important for the entire planet Earth. Amazon is so important that nobody can ever, reduce its importance. It is the biggest oxygen mask. It is the biggest rainmaker. It is a storehouse of biodiversity. Now, just because it is located in two or three countries, that does not mean they have the exclusive privilege to destroy it. They can improve on it, but they can't destroy it. That is why, we citizens who have all gathered right now here, yes, we need to come together, we need to think, we need to ponder, and let there be many more, many more such sessions so that we can come up with solutions. One solution is, yes, United Nations has to undergo reforms. It has to take a new shape. It served its purpose. I'm not belittling it, but then the responsibilities are very, very heavy today because every ecosystem in the entire world is collapsing. Climate change is a reality. Already, emissions, the way they are increasing. So what is the big reason? Where did the path go wrong? What needs to be done? Now, the question is, Dr. Narasimha Reddy is a big authority on this. He has written on decarbonizing the world. So the need right now is decarbonization of our economy, our entire activity, human activity. We need to reduce the emissions. We need to decarbonize, and for this calls for a change in a major shift in paradigm. We call it as a major paradigm shift. Right now, development means, as promoted by the economists, by the corporates, and the corporates. When I talk about the corporates, they are the transnational corporates, TNCs, and they are there everywhere. Right now, it is estimated that 200,000 transnational corporates are functioning in the entire world, gobbling up all the natural resources, emitting oxides of carbon, nitrogen, sulfur, etc. And they are throwing their waste here and there and everywhere. They are managing the political system, the social system, the media. As a result, on one side, citizens are very much concerned. Citizens of the world are coming together. United Nations and the citizens are functioning in the same wavelength, but United Nations is helpless. Citizens are helpless. So we need to find somewhere. We need to strengthen democracy, strengthen the citizens, and citizens also. They need to come out of their shells. Simply, discussing and pledging a support in the social media or giving a thumbs up for a cause, that is not sufficient. Yes, we need, each one of us should become activists. We need to learn to make a, first of all, understand the issue, then make it a common cause, then common action for the common future of humanity. Just one more point. Today, sustainable development goals are the new uh, oxygen for the planet Earth. They need to be implemented, but I'm very sorry to say that there is no global agency to ensure that the nations of the world are sincerely, strictly implementing. What is happening at the UN level is that these I mean, I'm talking about the sovereign government, so-called sovereign governments, they simply give some report, and those reports are not scrutinized. United Nations doesn't have a mechanism to ensure that these reports are authentic. Yeah, some report, somebody would sit in somewhere and make a report, and they speak as a language which will convince any person, but they are not verifiable. For example, in India, instead of reducing the emissions, we are increasing the emissions. Recently, the government has gone in for even leasing of coal mines, and the relaxations are such that it is going to be a big catastrophe. Not only this, the very idea of development that is still continuing in India, for example, the kind of agriculture promoted in the name of what we call intensive agriculture, so-called green revolution. But what is so green revolution as conceived and promoted in this country and elsewhere also? It is nothing but hybridization of seeds and chemicalization of agriculture. Not a single Indian city is livable. So what are we telling the world? Our reports at the UN will indicate it sometimes it gives the impression as if the government of India has adopted a green agenda. In reality, it is not. And this is the picture of every country. Don't think of India alone. Every other country, except for small little countries like Bhutan, which have, of course, they stand as a role model, but that is a very small percentage. Friends, we need to come together, make a serious thinking, and we need to how we will do it. We should discuss, and towards the end, if necessary, I will again participate. Thank you, Dr. Sai Reddy. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you very much, sir, for your excellent words and um, presenting the situation and the challenges. Uh, as Lloyd Elfert is about to join, so I request, if possible, the second speaker, Madam Sarojini Rangam, she could give her lecture if she is ready. Otherwise, as of now, I need to introduce about Lloyd. In that case, Dr. Donti Narsam Reddy would introduce Madam Sarojini Rangam. So I request Dr. Donti Narsam Reddy to introduce you.
I think I already introduced, but anyway, Sarojini Rangam is a very senior campaigner, international campaigner, but working with Pesticide Action Network Asia Pacific. But she's also not only working on pesticide, but also on women issues, equity and justice, land ownership, so across Asia. So, though based in Malaysia, she works with networks in different countries. So she has a very wide knowledge and and I think she pushed for certain reforms at international level. Maybe she can discuss some of them. Uh, so I welcome her to speak now.
Thank you, Narasimha. My topic will be on hungry for change, advancing agroecology and food sovereignty. And I really like to wish everyone a happy Earth Day. And I would like to thank the hosts, the Council on Green Revolution, who invited me to speak in this webinar, and Dr. Narasimha for suggesting my name. So thank you very much. And I'm very happy to be here to share some of the work that we are doing. Next slide, please. Okay. One of the things that has come out because of the COVID-19 pandemic, all the different agencies of the UN, for example, the World Food Programme has warned that because of the COVID-19, the crisis threatens to push another 130 million people to the brink of a famine. And you must understand that famines and hunger and malnutrition is a crisis of food distribution and poverty, and not really of food production. In fact, if you look at the food production, there's overproduction, and that is why you hear of stories where farmers have left tomatoes to rot in the fields, or the Europeans dumping milk in the sea. So there is an overproduction. But it's not going to the people who really need it, and I will touch on some of that reasons. So even before the pandemic, there are about 821 million chronically hungry people, and 6 out of every 10 of them are Asians. So even though Asia is one of the top food producers and exporters, but we have a global, we have the number of food insecure population more than half compared to the global numbers. So when before COVID-19 hit, you have this production, a capitalist production that has intensified and entrenched hunger for the world's poor through policies on food and agriculture. Next slide, please. So, what has happened during the lockdown? We are seeing loss of lives and livelihoods and the erosion of people's rights. So, 1.6 billion workers in the informal sector, nearly half the global workforce, stand immediate danger of losing their livelihoods. And this is coming from ILO. Worse, what's happening now is that throughout the region in Asia, we're finding that governments are using the pandemic to push for more corporate control and profits, even using human rights violations. And one of the problem countries is the Philippines. As of now, there are 325 documented killings of peasants, farm workers, and fisherfolk related to land dispute cases, and people who have advocate for agrarian reform. And these numbers actually have increased if you look at political prisoners. And that is, I think, one of the key problems that we are seeing as the Philippines invites more investments in the country and opening the countries to big corporations, agribusinesses to come in. So in India, even now, you can see that last year we heard, and there was so much of protest last year when the government was trying to remove laws that safeguard workers' wages, benefits, and safety. And in October, there was a major protest, which is still going on, against the farm laws that impacts farmers and the public distribution system. So consumers, poor consumers, are also affected. In Indonesia, the government pushed through the omnibus law, and this is really detrimental to the lower and middle class workers. It removes all safeguards in terms of wages, safety, benefits, etc. And it has also poised to damage the environment because it has reduced or removed environmental assessment before projects are approved. So, and you can see the huge protests in Indonesia. This is from Jakarta, and they are protesting against the omnibus law. But because of the COVID-19 pandemic, where you really cannot have a good, continued protests and campaign, the Indonesian government just pushed through this law in the parliament. Moving on, next one. So what has happened is that the policies basically, if you look at neoliberal policies and government policies, national policies, that have actually intensified social and economic injustices. So you have a historical oppression of marginalized rural communities. And this can be even traced back to colonial times, but it has intensified during the agreements under the World Trade Organization, where the North and the South, there was a big divide. If you remember the protests, even of governments against this WTO and some of the agreements, especially the agreement on agriculture and the one that basically pushed for the patent laws for patents to be recognized. And so this was a process that even the World Bank and the IMF and other multilateral credit agencies has been pushing this either through structural adjustment programs or through the PRSP, which is the poverty reduction programs. If you look at the AOA, the Agreement on Agriculture, it allows agricultural dumping. So the North is now dumping their overproduction in the South, and our farmers and our small businesses cannot actually compete, and so a lot of people are losing jobs and their livelihoods, and all countries in Asia have become export dependent on export to survive, and very little investments in agriculture, especially if it is intended for domestic food. Land grabs is happening. Huge hectares of land has been grabbed, and China. If you look at Asia, China is one of the big land grabbers recently. But you will find that all European countries and the US were, have been doing that systematically. Either it's through mining, or it's for big plantations. Then you have the neoliberal policies that denationalize food and food production, distribution, and consumption. And COVID-19 actually has further intensified the social and economic injustices. And one of the things in our area of focus, which is pesticide, and we've been fighting for the elimination of the highly hazardous pesticides in food and agriculture. One of the things that some countries like Thailand, they were trying to ban glyphosate or Roundup, which is identified as a potential or a possible human carcinogen by the International Agency on Research on Cancers. So they tried to ban it last year, but the US came down very hard and said, you cannot do this. Of course, they were putting pressure on Thailand, and finally Thailand rescinded. So you can see that even when governments are trying to safeguard the health of people and the environment, there is the other countries like US pushing for them to not do that, and basically safeguard the US corporations and their big businesses. Moving on, next slide, please. So the current food crisis, so it's a question of, in terms of food availability, because of the COVID-19, there were supply chain disruptions, production curtailments, because suddenly, we were all on lockdown, and people were not even allowed to go and farm. And then, then slowly things change, but still things are more difficult. How do you do social distancing if you're a fisher folk, or social distancing if you're doing harvesting? And then pest and climate related problems do crop up. Then you have the food excess, volatility of food prices, because it's going up and down as, and the farm law actually allows the hoarding. That's a potential for the farm law to allow hoarding. And that was one of the major problems in terms of volatility of food prices during the food crisis. If you remember 2008, 2009, and until 2012, this was every country was going through a food crisis. Then, of course, the loss of income, impediments to humanitarian food aid, because everybody was on lockdown, so there was transportation was a problem, planes were not flying, and then the falling farm gate prices in certain cases. The next slide, please. So who profits? And this is something that ETC Pat Mooney, he put this together in I think it was 2015. And you can see that a few companies, big transnational corporations. So if you look at seeds, you can go to this document actually on the web. It's free, and you can get a better view on this. But if you look at seeds, 67% is controlled by top 4 companies. If you look at the pesticides, 70% is being controlled by top 4 companies, and most of them are either from Europe or I think most of them are Europe, because Monsanto has been bought over by Bayer. So Bayer, Syngenta, Corvita, which is still US, Corvita, and BSF. So those are the top 4. Although some of the Indian companies are, being growing faster than others. Fertilizers, 18%. Controlled by top 5, and you can see that the concentration of power is with these corporations. And if you look at again the pesticide issue, we just released a group called Public Eye in Switzerland. Published a report on how Syngenta, that the producer of paraquat, basically was falsifying data for the regulators. And this is so systematic that they have done, but somehow Public Eye was able to get some of the documents and show that this Syngenta has been falsifying data and saying that it's safe from 1970s. And if you check the paraquat papers, if you Google, you will find those. That's a very good report. Moving on, next slide. So this is what's happening. Even the Gates and Syngenta foundations are pushing the public research through the Consultative Group on International Agriculture Research. And the UN-led World Food Systems Summit is also hijacking the summit's agenda, and it's a corporate agenda because you have Guterres, the UN the Secretary General, has now basically asked Agnes Kalibata, who is from AGRA, the Alliance for a Green Revolution in Africa, and the world to be the main person for the WFSS, and World Economic Forum is now pushing the agenda, which is a very corporate agenda. They're talking about digitalization, GMOs, genetically modified organisms, industrial agriculture, without even talking about agroecology and other more positive things. And we know that the Alliance for Green Revolution, after so many years, there's been no positive outcome, and reports are coming out now about the lack of progress in Africa. And so even in the Philippines, you find that you have this Department of Agriculture calling Plant program, which is distributing rice and corn seeds and pesticides to farmers. And they get hooked, and then they have to go to the back to the market to buy these seeds. Malaysia, where I come from, they are also pushing high-tech farming. And during the COVID-19 pandemic, the corporations, CropLife, has been pushing this agenda with the Malaysian government. Next slide, please. So why then we now have to talk about what are the solutions. And so I just want to identify a few things, and one of the key elements that we feel is very important is the food sovereignty, because first of all we have to start from who produces our food. And small scale food producers produce 70% of the total global food production, and this is a UNEP data, and 450 million laborers work on industrial plantations and farms. So there's a huge numbers of people who are actually involved in agriculture, and Asia is an agrarian society. So we are changing, but majority are still from the rural areas. So moving on, next slide. I'll try to finish this so that I can have more questions to be asked. Next slide, please. So what is people's food sovereignty? It's really for the rights of community and peoples to decide their own food and agriculture policy. So it's not the government, it's not the WTO, it's not the World Bank, but people on the ground and the small food producers who have to be part of the process to decide their own food and agriculture policy. Uphold peasants' right to land and productive resources, because without land, it's very difficult to be a farmer, to produce food, and also to have seeds, because seeds is also very necessary. It's to own and to share, to conserve and to select and breed. Right to food for all is another concept. Right to produce sustainably, and that's where we push for agroecology. And I think it's the best way forward for food production. And of course, rights of women, because women, hold more than half the sky. Women have been the main food producers in many of our communities, ensuring livelihoods and fair prices for farmers and farming communities, rights of workers for fair wages, health and safety ensured. Moving on, next slide, please. Okay, just to share some of our campaigns. So we have the PAN-EP campaign on food rights now, which is it's also looking at the impact of COVID-19 on rural people, on food producers, but it's a whole both the documentation, campaign, and advocacy for agrarian reform, genuine agrarian reform. And this is our website, so please feel free to check us out. Then we have a campaign on protecting children from toxic pesticides, and children are actually bearing the brunt of the poisons that we are using in agriculture. We are spraying, it's going everywhere, and there are many cases where children continue to be affected. Then the campaign to phase out highly hazardous pesticides in agriculture by 2030 and ban HHPs in India, which is something that Dr. Narasimha and others, Pan India and Tunnel and many other groups are working to try to get rid of some of the HHPs in India. And I also wanted to touch base on the People Summit on Food Systems. And this is our counter summit to the world, the UN-led summit. So we wanted to counter that because we felt that we need to have a much more stronger response from the people and the small food producers and all of us, rather than, the corporations talking and pushing their own agenda. And the People Summit on Food Systems, I think, is also very important because it's sharing agroecological practices. It's all the solutions that people on the ground are doing. And we hope that some of the governments also can join us, because it's not just, a summit for it's actually summit for all of us. And after this webinar, actually, I will be moderating another session where we're launching the People Summit on Food Systems overall. And this will be starting point from now till September, when the actual UN World Food Summit, Food System Summit will happen. Next slide, please. Okay, this is just to say a bit more about the what this People's Food Summit, Global People's Summit on Food System is all about. It's really for us moving towards a just, equitable, and sustainable food system that serves the interests and needs of the people and the planet first, above profits. Moving on. So please join us. If you can't join us today, we will make sure that we share the website and the social media platforms. So we strengthen people's resistance to build and to build alternatives. So basically, genuine agrarian reform, support agroecology, workers' rights, and ensure decent living wages and end to contractualization. Ensure women's rights and empowerment, stop violations of human rights everywhere, and the caste system and feudalism and imperialism. Let's be for people's rights and for small food producers. Next slide, please. Thank you very much. I'll end here.
Thank you, madam. Thank you very much for your excellent presentation. And we'll see if we have any questions, then you could answer them. So here, one of them was asking what type of implements taken to save the earth for this Earth Day.
Yes. So what we're doing is that we believe that agroecology and food sovereignty actually will safeguard the earth, because the system is, because pesticides pollute the environment, fertilizers pollute the environment, and also people. So it's not just the earth, but also human health is affected very badly. If you look at the pesticide poisoning human health, we just came out with a report that shows 385 million people are being affected or being poisoned every year due to pesticide. So it's a huge number, 385 million every year. So and also causes death. But the environment cannot sustain food production if you destroy the earth, if you destroy the soil. And so the whole push now is to ensure that the soil is fertile, by composting, by doing all sorts of things, but not putting chemical fertilizers and pesticides. So I think what PAN has been doing is really to protect the earth and to protect the people's health and the environment. So that's what we are doing. By launching the People's Food System Summit today, we are also getting people to understand that the earth is very important. That without the earth and the planet, we don't have life as humans, and as people, and so yes, thank you for that question.
Yeah, another question is what would be the alternatives to pesticides which would be eco-friendly?
Well, that's actually difficult because most of the pesticides are meant to kill or poison, basically to get rid of insects and animals and other organisms. So it's a poison. So what we need to do is to move away from pesticides, but you could use some natural pesticides like neem, and India is very good at developing the neem as pest control. There's also the also so other natural materials that can be done, like some people have used chili, some have used what do you call garlic, and so there's many ways to do it. But the key is not to think of pest control as much as improving the soil, because if the soil is healthy and fertile, the plant is and of course the seeds are also are able to sustain, and so the with the seeds and the fertile soil, the plant can be very strong and able to withstand some of the pests coming in. So there are many other methods of, if you look at agroecology in terms of doing crop rotation, making sure that you plant in all the legumes to fertilize the soil. So there's a whole kind of learning exchange that's going on, and that's something that PAN has been very much involved in, doing this learning exchanges on agroecology. So if you check the website again, there are a lot of videos on how you can grow food even in your small garden or on your balcony, in terms of agroecologically.
Yeah, there are two relevant questions, madam, especially related to organic farming, why it is not rapidly being implemented in country, means I mean to say in all the countries. Other.
Why It's because many things. One is when the green revolution took place in the 70s, farmers were actually forced to use the high yielding varieties, or what I call the high input varieties, where you need pesticides and fertilizers for the seeds to germinate and to grow. So people were actually forced, farmers were forced. And if you know farmers, they are slow to take on new ideas and new things. They have to be shown that this works. But the policies that were instilled and implemented and by enforced, like in Indonesia during the 70s and the 80s, during the time of Suharto, people were not allowed to use their own seeds. They have to use the high yielding varieties. And so if not, you can be arrested and jailed, and so it was a forced thing to use this, and people got caught up in the cycle of using pesticides, high yielding varieties and fertilizers. And so then people started to get hooked. It's a kind of addiction in that sense. And now when you want to move to organic, you have to have a change, and not many scientists are supporting that. There's a slow change for sure, but one, it is people still worry, oh my, there will be pest attack, so it's more difficult now to convince farmers because there's no more subsidies, there's nothing, no, there's no even research. So it's going from farmer to farmers exchanges. Some NGOs are doing that, some institutions, but it's very small efforts. And I think that's why organic farming has not moved. But with the COVID-19, we are seeing that at least in Malaysia and Thailand, that more people are actually buying organic. And it's a bit more expensive. I acknowledge that, because farmers have to also survive. And so the whole food distribution system is difficult for them, because they have to isolate and, get the organic products to the market. But we hope that as more and more people start to buy organic, it's coming down. And of course, grow your own organic food in your garden, or in your homestead, or in your homes.
Probably last question, madam. This is very much relevant to the next speaker also. That is regarding the soil fertility management, including restoring our soils and microbial life and all that. How do we do that?
Well, I think first of all, don't use chemicals. I mean, that's the bottom line. But there's a lot of learnings, actually, understanding the soil, the composition, putting organic matter into the soil, microorganisms. So earthworm, vermiculture is so important. So sometimes it feels like we're going backwards, but actually those are things that have worked for farmers in the past. And soil fertility is important. If you're talking about moving and switching to agroecology, it's much easier to do. So I think for me, the soil is one of the key element for change that is required if we are moving to a more sustainable, more planet, kind of a situation where we are supporting the planet, and we are protecting the environment, and in the consequently, we also support our health. So I think the soil is really the beginning. Seeds and then soil. I think those are the two most important if you're talking about moving forward in terms of agroecology.
Yeah, thank you very much, madam, for your valuable time and addressing on the most important issues. And you have given us a way how to network and on the causes and issues, how to bring the larger consensus globally. And your efforts are very much appreciated. And Dr. Donti Narasimha Reddy from India is representing your initiatives in India.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
definitely we'll see how we could work together on this mission for a better earth. Thank you very much, madam, once again. And now I welcome our another internationally renowned panelist, Lloyd Helferty from Canada. And I'll give a brief introduction about him. And I know him since for the past 15 years. Lloyd Helferty is appointed as a Goodwill Ambassador for achieving SDGs. And Lloyd is an advocate for the smart and sustainable use of technology, energy conservation, renewable energy, sustainable land use, soil and nature conservation, good community design, and the renaturalization of our towns and cities. He is graduated from Yorkville University School of Technology in 1995, but he worked initially in the product development, and he traveled to several developed and developing countries, including Taiwan, China, Korea, Japan, Malaysia, India, Brazil, UK, United States, and many other countries too. And Lloyd co-founded a Canadian Biochar Consortium. This is to do with soil fertility amendments and management. This is a way for addressing the climate change and other issues too. And he actively participated in the and is one of the founding members of the Climate Smart Agriculture Youth Network, which was based out of Cameroon, Africa, led to the development of a food consulting group and a climate smart food working group. And right now, Lloyd is a founding member of the CSF consulting group and executive director of the Resilient World Institute. He also serves as the Chief Ecosystem Director, Project Development Director, and Sustainable Society Consultant at NRGM University. Planting of trees of peace and reconciliation in local communities and public and private properties. This is the most important initiative. I think he will share about what it is exactly in his talk. And creating and managing and updating uh, a dynamic or online sacred sites, basically, or watershed map, which marks on it the locations of every tree of peace and reconciliation. And he is working on the CST gardens, uh, VIC tree forest, climate smart kitchens, and other open source regenerative climate smart infrastructure with the local community. And he has been doing several other collaborative tree planting programs, and his work has been very well known, and he has networked with several countries in these initiatives. We would like to listen to you, sir. Please.
Thank you very much, Dr. Reddy. Actually, I'm coming to you today from Ontario, Canada, and in the middle of a lockdown, stay-at-home order. So we're actually going to be doing an event tonight. Anyways, going to our Tree of Peace and Reconciliation. I might be alone. I might be with one more person, but we're allowed up to 5 people in our community to go to this event. So today is actually Earth Day. Very important that we're having this event now. But I wanted to explain our global unity campaigns and what we're calling a global unity pandemic as the next stage of this health pandemic. As we come out of the health pandemic, we're actually hoping to create a pandemic of global unity, using the word pandemic in this case as an adjective. So the Greater Unity Pandemic Action Team that I'm now involved with actually is an international partnership for global unity, for global cooperation in the service of implementing this program that Dr. Reddy had described of practical, global, holistic humanitarian entrepreneurship education and training, and the putting in related regenerative infrastructure that will allow local populations in every country to acquire those survival skills that they need. And we're basing it on, of course, remote learning and virtual collaboration, and looking at those solutions that are most relevant to individual local needs. So as per the local considerations, but it's being done in service of implementing and achieving those sustainable development goals locally, leaving no one behind. So the Global Unity Pandemic is really just a first response platform to raise awareness and support from, of course, where we are now with this shelter-in-place environment that is really dictating our collective interests for the immediate future. So the idea is for the We Energime Global Cooperation Turtle Island International Civil Society Organization, which began with the planting of our first tree of peace and reconciliation. That organization being the primary coordinator for this global unity pandemic, where their mandate is actually what we call life value peace education. And so we are implementing a related Victory Pandemic local event, project, and program that is attached to that learning system. So what we want to do through the We Energize Global Cooperation Turtle Island projects is actually implement what we call life learning gardens. So within these gardens, we intend to actually demonstrate that it's possible that human behavior, through the introduction of these more coherent and inclusive ideas like we just saw in the previous presentation, and through the adoption of holistic, nature-based, knowledge-centric visions, can be unplugged, reprogrammed in such a way that people's lives moving forward can actually positively affect the changes that are necessary in order to create a better world that we all know is possible. So the goal actually is rather overarching. It's human consciousness 2.0, so that human individuals are capable of relating to all living things as if we are part of nature and nature is part of us. And I think we're trying to bridge that disconnect in human consciousness. So we've been doing this for a few months now, coming together as a group, an organization called Global Unity Pandemic, even though the We Energize Global Cooperation Turtle Island International Civil Society Organization has been around since late 2019. But we are starting the next phase of what we call the Unity Pandemic by gathering at our trees of peace and reconciliation. We've planted 3 here in Toronto area, one in particular in a community called St. Jamestown in Toronto. So we're gathering today, Thursday, September 22nd, on Earth Day, in the evening. So in about 12 hours from now, we will recount our history since planting our first tree of peace and reconciliation in September 2019 in Pickering, Ontario, up until this moment. So we'll also be marking that with what we call a minute of silence at sunset. And sunset today for us is 8:40 p.m., or actually 8:10 p.m. And we'll be marking this as a minute of peace. And we'll be asking all people of the earth actually to come together with us to observe this minute of peace at the same time as we do. And asking that all people of the world also repeat this minute of peace every week on Tuesdays at 4 p.m. Eastern Time, or 8 p.m. Greenwich Mean Time, in solidarity with our mission of assisting humanity to achieve global peace through a process what we call reconciliation and forgiveness. So we're inaugurating this Global Unity Week in Canada, the United States Kingdom, the UK, and in Sierra Leone in Africa. And those serving as examples of achieving peaceful, resilient, and regenerative localized economies in all communities across the entire Commonwealth of Nations, which of course includes India, and eventually around the world. So our event in St. Jamestown tonight will also announce the next phase of the Global Unity Pandemic, which will focus again on Canada, Sierra Leone, and the UK, but eventually all Commonwealth countries. So we're now in the process of planning a series of high-level events in all 3 countries, which include the Trees of Peace and Reconciliation tree planting ceremonies. Again, in all 3 countries, now targeted for Saturday, June 5th, which is World Environment Day. And this marks the beginning of what we want to create is a week-long Bubble Fun Festival in Sierra Leone, during which time we'll also host what's an event called the Sunlight Spectacle 2021, which is a virtual edutainment event. That will be on June 10th with our partners in Canada, Sierra Leone, and the UK, but with contributions being solicited from all of what we call the 5 Eyes partners, which is the USA, Australia, New Zealand, and Bermuda, which actually serves as what's called the iris of the 5 eyes. So we'll invite participation as well from artists and entertainers, basically all members of what's called the orange economy, from the entire Commonwealth of Nations community. So the 54 countries of the Commonwealth, along with all indigenous communities of Turtle Island, so North America, also including Mexico and the Caribbean. So this year is year one basically, with plans to expand the festival to eventually host Global Unity Week events across the entire Commonwealth of Nations, in every one of the 54 countries in future years. And we'll also be inviting all 88 countries that are members of La Francophonie, as well as all countries of the African Union, eventually to include all countries of the earth, to celebrate these Bubble Fun festivals. So the idea around the Bubble Fun Festival is to promote the global unity that we would like to achieve. So we're creating victory pandemic programs in multiple countries right now, which is intended to actually promote and assist people in local communities worldwide, but locally, with the deployment of these learning gardens and the learning programs that are associated with those gardens. So to teach people about how to implement the local climate smart solutions in infrastructure that can produce certified climate smart food. So this infrastructure is the CSV gardens, or the Climate Smart Victory Gardens, the Victory Forests, the Wheel of Life farms, and the types of what we call bubble pod buildings, along with promoting climate smart kitchens, where we'll demonstrate and teach people locally about the use and preparation of this climate smart food. So we create a global network of these life learning gardens via these Victory Unity Pandemic Learning Garden program, which will eventually include, of course, the Climate Smart Victory Gardens, or CSV Gardens. That's actually being delivered by an organization called the Foundation for Building Sustainable Communities, FBSC. The Victory Forests, which are also learning forests, which are set up as basically 3D polyculture food forests, delivered again by this organization, FBSC. Wheel of Life farm schools, which are actually being delivered by an organization called TQLMA out of Pakistan. And this is actually being implemented through an organization called CDF and the CDF Global Partnership, working with an organization out of Vietnam called Empowering the Poor Through Waste Transformation, EPWT. And then we're also developing a climate smart kitchens program, using the kitchens again as learning kitchens. And so there's an organization here in Toronto called Kindred Kitchens, which is developing that program. And then finally, we have a Spark Learning Centers program delivered by a Spark for Humanity team. And they're working with a company called Pyropod, which is a member of PodNet, which is based out of Iceland. So we will be promoting and developing a global network of what we call Spark Learning Centers, basically peace and regenerative community education and training centers that will essentially teach people, local community members in every community where we're invited to come in, focusing on youth, educators, decision makers, as well as really focusing on the female humanitarian entrepreneurs and their supporters, so the men. And we're going to be teaching people about the various practical solutions to achieving regenerative communities and regenerative local economies. So we're helping communities accelerate the implementation of solutions for achieving the Sustainable Development Goals, but also helping communities move beyond sustainability by helping them help themselves we really want them to leapfrog into the kind of the 21st century global collaborative and what we call cooperative economy. So where cooperation becomes more of the paradigm versus competition as the only paradigm for doing business. So to make this work, we're already beginning to establish what we call a global network of Victory pandemic community engagement and action teams in local communities worldwide to help host the events that we do, which includes the Tree of Peace and Reconciliation tree planting ceremonies, the Bubble Fun festivals, and other local community engagement events. So where we have local teams that will help identify local talent, entertainers that can contribute to these Sunlight Spectacle edutainment events, which coincide with the solar eclipse events that happen around the world. So we did last year in Toronto at our St. Jamestown Tree of Peace and Reconciliation, the first Sunlight Spectacle 2020 event. This edutainment event was coordinated out of Bermuda. We're now planning the next event. And we go back to these trees of peace and reconciliation in our communities, and those become focal points. So the Victory Pandemic teams, we created Victory Pandemic GTA, a Greater Toronto area, last year. We're starting to organize them around the world now. They would also be charged with organizing the local Bubble Fun festivals. And so we've created an internationally coordinated Bubble Fun festival network. And we're tasking the local Victory Pandemic teams to organize themselves so that they can also create local Unity Pandemic business teams consisting of these local humanitarian entrepreneurs in order to work with the local, mostly female humanitarian entrepreneurs in the community who can begin building and demonstrating these open source, regenerative, climate smart infrastructure solutions in their own local communities. So the climate smart Victory Gardens, the Victory Forests, these bubble buildings, which we have determined are probably the only climate smart greenhouses in existence. So our plan is actually aligned with what's called the PodNet plan to deploy this climate smart infrastructure and these growing solutions, these greenhouses that have been outfitted with these bubble technologies. But we want to start in schoolyards as climate smart classrooms. So as well as other places where the public, like youth, the target audience of youth educators and decision makers can see and experience these buildings, and where researchers and local institutions of higher education, our universities, our colleges, and their students, as well as other local entrepreneurs, will have access to these buildings in order to learn about and experience the solutions firsthand. So ultimately, the Unity Pandemic Business Group Network plans to assist in the deployment of these climate smart classrooms as what we're calling Spark Learning Centers, where the local Unity Pandemic teams will organize and create what we call heptamatrix partnerships, or interfaith neighborhood and business collaboratives that can organize community members and businesses to help build at least one peace center, or what we call a hub of climate smart learning in each community where we're invited, and where the people who work in these local learning centers will have the opportunity to actually teach all of the local residents in that community about the things that are related to peace, reconciliation, forgiveness, and the local implementation of these solutions to achieving the Sustainable Development Goals. So that was our original plan, created January 2020, to establish a local or a global community peace centers network. So this first phase, again, Canada, Sierra Leone, UK, but eventually all Commonwealth nations. We'll also be engaging, of course, here in North America with the Indian Canadian diaspora as much as possible to encourage and get their support for what we're doing. And in Africa, there's at least 2 other countries, Kenya and Nigeria, will very likely be next in line after our launch in Sierra Leone. And we'll want to establish what we call a Canada-India Climate Smart Network, starting with the Victory Pandemic India team. So I will hopefully have discussions with Dr. Reddy after this in the following weeks, and we'll begin to introduce them to our Unity Pandemic Business team and connect them to organizations like the Canada-India Climate Smart Network to create this network, and groups like the Canada-India Network Society, the Canada-India Business Council, and then begin to create partnerships through this heptamatrix partnership system that we've been using in Drawdown Markham, where I've been organizing for the last 2 years, where we would like to create partners along the lines of the United Nations multi-stakeholder partnerships. So the program we're actually implementing with our partners, again, focused on We Energize Global Cooperation Turtle Island, which of course has the mandate to educate people about life value and peace, and what we call life value peace education, has this mandate to build the life learning gardens, serving as the classrooms to deliver the programs around the practical ways, meaning life value and why it's more important actually than money value. And so we're working with these organizations like the Ad Hoc International Advisory Board of the Goodwill Ambassadors, which I am the Goodwill Ambassador for Canada, the Francophonie, Turtle Island, and the Commonwealth. And so we are trying to replicate the successes of each community and share them among our global network. And this is where we want to engage communities everywhere around the world to build safe and sustainable communities and cities, which actually take climate action with the goal of leaving no one behind. And so this is a plan that we're implementing this decade, starting now until 2030 at least, during what's called the Decade of Action and Delivery on the SDGs. And we're planning on engaging actually with the United Nations Global Compact local networks infrastructure. And our goal is actually to increase the current number of civil society members in the UNGC in order to balance and hold accountable, especially the multinational corporations and those international governmental agencies and governments that have already been publicly registered with the UNGC pursuant to the existing 2021 to 2023 local network strategy. So we're actually engaging with these chief executives of these corporations and NGOs and nonprofits and civil society organizations, asking those chief executives and assisting them to join the UN Global Compact. So we're getting the civil society organizations to become a major influential voice within the United Nations Global Compact, which is dominated right now by businesses and corporations. But we can overwhelm them with the voice of the small scale, the rural, and the local, and where we'll be demanding basically these chief executives to work with us and not against us. And we want these chief executives to actually, we'll be asking them as well to invite 10 more members to join in, not corporations, but 10 more civil society local organizations to create what we call a worldwide network of local interfaith neighborhood and business collaboratives. So we're creating this, what we call global network of local networks, whose mandate is to build safe and sustainable communities and cities that leave no one behind. where the benefit of joining this network of local networks is to open these doors worldwide and locally as members of the UN Global Compact, along with the other nonprofit organizations in our network, so that we can join, grow, and expand the UNGC local networks infrastructure, which advocates for the 10 principles of the United Nations Global Compact. So the local networks are promoting respect for human rights, inclusive, of course, of indigenous rights, labor, environment, and anti-corruption, while also helping to build climate-smart economy in local communities. So this is what the Ad Hoc International Advisory Board of Goodwill Ambassadors is currently launching as a multilingual, multinational UNGC local network membership drive, starting 2021-23 in India, in Venezuela, in Canada, in USA, among others. And their 21 to 23 campaign is actually intended to complement the existing UN Global Compact local network strategy. So we have a number of organizations supporting us. So the Global PodNet Cooperative, which helps local communities organize their own bubble fun festivals, organization called GTI Enterprises, and We Are Mother Earth, which is organizing the Spark for Humanity campaign, which includes what's called a Youth Build Academy and Return to Honor hands-on education of high school and other formerly incarcerated youth and students, which allows those youth and students to heal from some of their past traumas. They're taking a strength-based approach for what's working for them in their development and career path, and which is also developing a network of what they call villages of the future. These are called Togetherland. So working as well, I mentioned earlier, with the Foundation for Building Sustainable Communities to deploy these climate smart victory gardens, the victory forests, the climate smart kitchens, and all the related community learning programs and the related certification systems. And this organization or a company actually called Kindred Kitchens, which will be delivering the climate smart kitchens programs. And these will actually be the primary places in the local communities where we'll implement our marketing programs, and where the climate smart growing systems will get constant visibility and recognition by other community members, by the non-farmers.
Lloyd, sorry to interrupt you.
Mm-hmm. So do I have a
few? You might have a few questions before.
Yeah. I just want. I'm almost done.
Yeah.
I just want to finish this last bit, just to mention the Community Development Foundation out of Pakistan, which is also managing a global women's development network, which was actually created by an American International Education Foundation, Professor Dr. Tamara Omar, and the Community Development Foundation President Mariam Khan. So these are some of the organizations that we're now working with, and we're coming together now in a unity campaign right now. So this is what we're going to be hopefully rolling out across India eventually as well, as we move forward. But as I mentioned before, we're starting actually in Africa, but we are targeting eventually all Commonwealth countries. Eventually, also, of course, the Francophonie countries, because Canada being the only G20 country actually that's a member of both the Commonwealth and the Francophonie. So that's the 54 countries of the Commonwealth, 88 countries of the Francophonie, makes up something like 2/3 of the global population in just those two organizations.
Thank you very much, Lloyd, for your excellent presentation and the kind of effort that you are putting to unite globally all the people and organizations together, not only to achieve the sustainable development goals, but the micro level initiatives like the gardens, which would help people get connected back to nature. They are very much related to our geospirit centers and other things, that initiatives that are going on here, as well as the some of the aspect that you said, especially on the India Climate Smart Network, yes, definitely we would like to be part of that, as well as a goodwill ambassador. We would like to initiate ourselves into that UN program because we are also working on UN Sustainable Development Goals, and definitely, I think you will guide us in that regard. And the
Hmm.
climate smart classrooms, yes, we have initiated such a program in the school. So environmental labs, school environmental labs, kind of thing. We are research centers in each school, so that students can be aware of their own climate and the environment, and they should learn about their own pollution and other aspects. That is another program we are planning through Council for Green Revolution. So Council for
Hmm.
Green Revolution here in India also networks with several other organizations and individuals working tirelessly on this environmental challenges and climate change challenges, very much relevant to the kind of work that you are doing there. So in this regard, many other aspects like tree for peace and reconciliation, that is a very good idea. Even if you plant one tree before our parliament or before our assembly, that would remind people of the peace and reconciliation, as well as the unity aspect that would bring up constantly.
Hmm. Well, I'd like to mention that as well. That what the symbolism of the tree of peace and reconciliation means. Um, so when we plant a tree of peace and reconciliation in, let's say, in a garden, um, that garden can be converted into a climate smart victory garden or not. But the tree um, is symbolic of a gathering place within the community where people can come together. If the tree is visible to people as they're having this spot in their community to gather and discuss solutions to achieving the SDGs. So this becomes a place in the community that becomes a sacred space for discussing solutions to achieving what they would like to achieve in their own community as per their own community needs. But the tree symbolizes the unity of all people as one. We are all human beings. So when you gather around the trees, uh, they symbolize that unity. Therefore, we ask that anybody that gathers around the trees of peace and reconciliation to discuss these solutions to achieving the goals, to put aside their politics, to put aside the religious differences, to put aside all differences and come together as human beings with the goal of leaving no one behind in their own communities. So those trees become symbolic places to discuss solutions and to just lay aside their differences, no matter the color of their skin or their religious affiliation or their political affiliation. Put those aside. Let's just focus on those solutions and have those discussions to say, look, where are the biggest problems? The idea of LNOB, leave no one behind, is also this philosophy of privileged and those that are most marginalized first, and saying where are the biggest problems in our community? How can we solve those first and get to the most marginalized peoples and communities first? And let's just set aside those politics, set aside those differences.
Lloyd, I think it is philosophical, spiritual, humanitarian, and it has so much relevance in this COVID situation, this kind of initiatives.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely, we'll also initiate you and learn from you how to initiate this process within India and at several places. So thank you very much for your valuable time today for this participating in this international webinar. Thank you very much once again to you. And
Thank you.
yeah, thank you. Now we'll go to the next speaker, distinguished speaker. You can please participate and listen to our speakers, all of them. They are very excellent. So we have this Mr. Ricky Cage, and I would request Madam Haruna from Arthuril Network to introduce him. Uh, Thank you, Madam. Please continue.
Thank you so very much, and greetings to everyone on this occasion of the 51st anniversary of Earth Day. It is also the 12th anniversary of the Council for Green Revolution. You are doing excellent work, and for us, a proud moment as we enter the second year of our Pan-India Digital Earth Rail collaboration with the Council for Green Revolution. Thank you everyone for being here with us. And let me just not waste time to introduce Ricky Kedge, renowned singer, composer, who has sung in over 30 countries, has won over 100 awards, is a Grammy awardee. His album was #1 on the US charts, and he is has sung at the UN headquarters. He is with the an ambassador for Earth Day Network, of which I'm very, very proud. Thank you, Ricky. Let me publicly say that we are so grateful to you for sparing your time for us today and always, and for all your support to Earth Day Network.
Thank you.
For those who may not know, our new name is earthday.org. And we look forward to hearing from you on your very excellent topic, Music for the Planet. Ricky is somebody who combines his talent with his intellect and his his humanity and love for the environment all make a fantastic outcome that reaches people and inspires them to, do their bit for the planet. If you haven't heard Ricky Kedge's beautiful national anthem for India, which has all animals in it, as he said, they were there before we humans came up, or his invocation to Ganga, or his many, many songs that he has created for children, which are foot tapping, and children love them. I know I took Ricky Kedge to the first concert with my grandchildren, and for once they didn't grumble about coming with us because they were so thrilled to be there. So Ricky is going to be featured tonight at from 9:30 onwards in Earth Day Live, which will be broadcast all over the world. And we are so proud that Ricky is there, one amongst many, a small band of people who have been specially chosen for that. And Ricky has composed a special song. Thank you again, Ricky, for doing that. And everyone looks forward to hearing you live, in the concert and in the tape that is going to be scheduled shortly. Over to you, Ricky.
Thank you for that beautiful introduction, and always an absolute honor to work with the Earth Day Network, and I'm a proud ambassador of the Earth Day Network, so thank you for that.
Thank you.
And hello everyone over here, namaste to all of you, and of course a very, very happy Earth Day to all of you. And it's a huge honor for me to be a part of this amazing international webinar to restore our Earth. So today, as Karuna ji mentioned, that I'm going to be speaking about music and the environment, and I wish I could have delivered this talk in person, because being a musician, I thrive on feeding off the energy of my audiences. But today, instead, I'm looking into the lens of a camera. And, but such are the times. And as I said, I'm just honored to be here. So to start with this talk, I'm going to speak a little bit about my personal journey growing up and becoming who I am, because all of you might be wondering that what is a musician, doing in a conference like this. So as I was introduced, I'm Ricky. I'm a musician and an environmentalist, and these are two pillars that have pretty much dictated my whole life and all of my life decisions. And for the last few years, the only kind of music that I make is about the environment, about sustainability and positive social impact around those areas. Now, ever since I remember as a child, I've always been a musician. Even while I was not playing a musical instrument, I was performing music, I was obsessed with music. I would listen to music all day long. My father had this amazing, huge music collection, music from all over the world, not just pop music, but music from pretty much every region of the world. And I would listen to this music all day long. I would pull apart these songs, try to understand what are the different instruments in every song. And I would learn about different cultures and different people through the music that I would listen to. So a lot of my education has been through music. And it's very difficult for me to explain, but it was through music that I found a very deep connect with the natural world. For me, music and nature was one and the same. And during those days, I could not explain, but of course, now we know, because how did music start at the end of the day? So music started off as sounds from within nature, sounds of the birds, sounds of the trees, sounds of animals, sounds of the river flowing. And then slowly, we humans started imitating those sounds. And it's only for the last few hundred years that music has actually become academic with notes and scales and ragas and things like that. But music and nature has always been one and the same. And if you look at indigenous populations or tribes all over the world, they still perform music which is sounds of nature. Now, I also realized that I loved hanging around with animals more than I did with humans. And I was a very weird child while growing up. And so I was born and I spent the first 8 years of my life living in North Carolina, which is a state in America. And I lived in a very, very small town in North Carolina with a lot of wooded areas, lots of trees around me. And even though there were no large wild animals like what we have in India, there were a lot of very tiny, small, creepy, crawly animals which were seemingly dangerous, like snakes and reptiles and insects. And they would enter our home on a very regular basis. So while my parents would constantly, they would tell me that, no, if you see any of these animals, you have to immediately run away from them. They're very dangerous. And, the usual reaction of everybody is just to step on these animals and try to kill them. I was very drawn towards these animals. I would look into their eyes. I would try to see personality in every single one of these animals. And I would always wonder, why is everybody's first reaction to just kill these animals? And if they need to be killed, then why do they exist in nature in the first place? Why do they exist if we are just supposed to kill them? And of course, now I completely understand that every single animal, no matter how seemingly insignificant, is a very, very important part of the ecosystem. And so basically, and now, the whole world understands that right now. So I started off my musical career. So I'm just going to cut short and I'm going to move to when I became a professional musician many years later. There's a whole story behind that as to how I became a professional musician. But nevertheless, after many years, I became a professional musician. And I started off my career doing commercials for television and for radio. So I was doing commercials for television and radio for various multinational brands. And in a very short span of about 13 or 14 years, I saw tremendous success. I was making music for everybody from Google to Microsoft to Toyota, Suzuki, Pepsi, Coca-Cola, McDonald's, Pizza Hut, here, Airtel, Vodafone, basically every single brand and their competitor. I was basically creating music for them. And then after 13 years of doing this, it sort of dawned on me that these big brands have understood the power of music. They've understood the power of music, that music is a really powerful language, not just for communicating a message, but for retaining that message deep in the consciousness of a listener. So much so that they're ready to spend a few $1,000s on me to create a piece of music for them to drive a message of sales, because these brands are always trying to sell something. And not only that, they're ready to spend a few $1 million to actually air this music on television and radio. So they're ready to spend so much of money on music because they understand that music, as I mentioned, is such a powerful language, and it's far more powerful than just, talking ads or dramatic ads. So that is when I decided that, when these big brands have understood the power of music, it's high time that I, being a musician, need to understand the power of music. So then that is when I decided that I'm going to use my gift of music in my own small way to make this world a better place. And in my own small capacity, every single piece of music that I'm going to create, every single piece of music that comes out of my fingers, my studio, my head, is going to be about making this world a better place. And since I feel very strongly about the environment and sustainability, so all of my music is about the environment and sustainability. Then cut to a few years later in 2015, that is when I won the Grammy Award, which is the holy grail of music awards. And then I went on to make my epic album, that is Shanti Samsara, which was my album for environmental consciousness. So this time I featured 500 musicians from over 40 countries, including India, the United States, Australia, Turkey, Algeria, Senegal, Sweden, Korea, China, Vietnam, Canada, basically everywhere in the world where I could find a musician who felt as strongly about the environment and about climate action as I did. I would just fly there or to reduce my carbon footprint, remotely collaborate with them. And, and we made this album. And this album was launched at the climate change conference in Paris, that is the COP21. And it was launched by our Prime Minister and the then French President on their main stage. Now, while watching the COP21, while watching the climate change conference and watching all these world leaders go up on stage and give the presentation, one world leader who absolutely caught my attention was the president of Kiribati, the island nation of Kiribati, that is President Anotetong. He's the president of the Pacific Island nation of Kiribati. So he gave a really short presentation. He gave a presentation which is hardly about 2 or 3 minutes. And all that he said when he went up on stage was that all you 193 countries present over here, please pass a resolution that ensures that my people of Kiribati stay above the water. Now, that was such a powerful statement. And I'm really ashamed to say that I hadn't even heard of this country, Kiribati, let alone her disastrous fate. So I studied about Kiribati like everybody does. I went on to Google and I studied about this country. Kiribati is an island nation in the South Pacific. It's 21 inhabited islands, very low-lying atoll islands, one of the lowest-lying islands in the world. And the entire country will be completely uninhabitable in the next 30 years. And in the next 70 to 80 years, almost in our lifetime, the tallest point in any of these islands is predicted to go completely underwater due to climate change. So they're going to completely disappear. And the part on the maps and globes, which has got Kiribati in it, we're just going to have to paint it blue because they're just going to disappear from the face of the earth. So I visited Kiribati. I spent a few weeks over there, engaged with their amazing and their beautiful population. I fell in love with their culture, with the beauty of the island, spent a lot of time with their president. And I realized that this is a country that does not take more than they can give back from nature. They do not have any industrialization, no major development, almost zero carbon emissions, and yet, for no fault of their own, they are the ones who are going to go completely underwater due to climate change, and they're going to be the first country in the world to go completely underwater due to climate change. Now, if all of our nations, all of our developing nations and our developed nations, if we could build domes around our borders and keep our carbon emission within our own borders, then countries like Kiribati have nothing to worry about. But then the problem is that it is one atmosphere, and a very thin atmosphere at that. And our carbon emission spreads around the world, and global temperatures rise, polar ice caps melt. We all know the drill, and ocean levels rise. And since Kiribati are low-lying islands, they are suffering the consequences of our actions. So something very important that the president told me was that we Kiribati are at the front line of climate change, just like how you would be at the front line of a war. So we at Kiribati are at the front line of climate change, and we are definitely going to fall. And when we fall, that front line is going to keep moving back and back till those countries and those people who felt very comfortable and felt that they would never be affected by climate change will be affected. And that is the reality of our situation today. So being a musician, I made a song over there with a wonderful population, with the indigenous culture, which is going to be extinct very soon, and and with their president. So if you've ever been to a concert of mine, or if you've ever been to another talk of mine, you'll know everything that I just said, because this is something that I'm so passionate about, this country and the people. So please do check out my song on YouTube. It's called Samsara, Song for Kiribati. Check out the song. This song features their population and it features their president, and it talks about, the song is all about their plight. So we may or may not be able to do anything about Kiribati. They may or may not go underwater, but we can use Kiribati as a very strong example to showcase to the world that climate change is not some vague phenomenon that may or may not happen in the future. Climate change is happening right now. There are currently people who are absolutely affected by climate change. Climate change is human induced, and our actions sitting down over here are having disastrous consequences on people on the other side of the world. Now, in today's world of climate change, of species extinction, of deforestation, pollution, environmental degradation, so many society issues, I believe that the biggest threat to our environment, the biggest threat to our species, is the constant thought that we have that somebody else will make a difference. We're always waiting for other people to make a difference. We're waiting for governments, for NGOs, for corporations, for leaders to make a difference. When the truth is that to fix all of our problems, all that we need to do is look within ourselves. We are the agents of change. Everyone speaks about changing the world, but nobody talks about changing themselves. And that's not because all of us are evil people, but it's simply because we have not empowered ourselves to believe that we can truly make a difference if we just make small incremental changes within our own lives. So now, in order to encourage everyone around us to change behavior, we can make we can make like 1,000 speeches. We can showcase a huge amount of scientific data. But what is actually needed is for artists and musicians to actually interpret that data and interpret those speeches through the emotional language of music and the emotional language of arts, and touch the hearts and souls of people. And I believe that music and arts can be that amazing catalyst to drive people from mere awareness of problems to actually taking concrete actions to solve these issues and mitigate its effects. And that's what we need to do. So I'd like to conclude by quoting Baba Diom, who is a Senegalese philosopher. And this is a quote that I've pretty much lived my life on. That he said that at the end of the day, we as humans, we will only protect things that we love. And we will only love things that we understand, and we will only understand things that we're taught. So let us all make it our mission to make everyone fall in love with our natural world. And hopefully through that love, we will find it within ourselves to conserve, to sustain, and to protect. So thank you so much for this opportunity, and back to you, Karunaji.
So that is absolutely what we believe in also, Ricky. I don't know if everyone knows that earthday.org is promoting climate literacy as something compulsory to be taken up by nations all across the globe. And we would like nations that attend COP26 to make this, to take the center forward and to ensure that countries have compulsory environmental education, which leads to climate literacy. We just don't want education that's in the minds or, learned by rote and then, just spilt out for exams and forgotten. But we want that stewardship to grow in youth. And after the stewardship, we want there to be opportunities for the stewards to take action. So it's fantastic what you say. Climate education is so important, but it is all based on understanding.
Yes.
So understanding is the key word for everything we do. And I can see Dr. Reddy over there. Dr. Reddy, let me thank Council for Green Revolution so very much for giving us this opportunity. And over to you. Let me thank each one of your members and all those who are leading this organization to do such remarkable work and so selflessly. It's a pleasure to be participating with you. And let me tell Lloyd that I was so amazed at his ability to speak for so long. That's something I have to learn from you, Lloyd. 10 minutes and my throat goes dry. How do you do it? May I contact you offline and find out how to do it? Because you will agree. Maybe I'm strange, but 10 minutes and then my throat is gone. You can see I have cloves and sugar over here waiting for me. So I have to learn from you how to do that.
Thank you, Ricky Cage, and thank you, Karna Madam.
So, I would be happy to answer any questions if you've got any.
Could I ask Ricky as well, or make a comment? So, Ricky, your message aligns actually perfectly with the same message that's coming from the group that hosted our Sunlight Spectacle 2020 event. So music is the catalyst for the change we need to create, especially in youth. So Generation Hip Hop, which is actually based in South Africa, has been having the same message that you just had been able to say to the group as well. And so I really want to connect you with the people from Generation Hip Hop, especially this gentleman, Adam Greenwell. So Adam was actually the catalyst. So his mother, Liz Greenwell, started this organization called Global Cooperation Day many years ago. And that was based in New Zealand. But Global Cooperation Day created the Global Cooperation Turtle Island, eventually became We Energime Global Cooperation Turtle Island being North America, of course. The indigenous movement here is quite strong. The Canadian government is having this reconciliation process. So the Trees of Peace and Reconciliation is also representative of the process of reconciliation between the indigenous people of the world in healing our planet and using indigenous knowledge to help us learn and understand our connectedness to nature. So Generation Hip Hop is working with We Energime Global Cooperation Turtle Island and Global Cooperation Day New Zealand and Adam Greenwell to bring this message and to bring all of the artists together in solidarity to really bring this message to the youth, to the educators, to the decision makers, however do you define a decision maker, whether it's an elected leader or whether it's a CEO or a board of directors in a corporation. They need to hear this message, and it can be delivered through music. So what we call this category of learning is edutainment. So entertainment that educates. So we are starting this process. We actually, our Sunlight Spectacle event last year featured a video, and I'll actually see if I can share a link as well on YouTube for our promotional video. And I think you'll see that what you're doing has a lot of synergies with this group as well. And we'd love it if you could actually participate in the Sunlight Spectacle 2021 event, which we're calling Canada to the World, where last year it was Africa to Asia, where there was a solar eclipse. This annular eclipse started in Democratic Republic of Congo, where the solar eclipse was actually visible from Africa, across Southern Asia, across India, across China, and finished in Taiwan, where it was visible. This year, there's an annular eclipse, and that's June 10th. That's visible from Canada, where we want to engage with Indigenous communities across Canada and Indigenous communities around the world as well, to bring this message, especially to the youth, of the importance of connecting us to nature.
Thank you very much, Ricky Cage. And now we go to the next program, that is the launching of Earth Reel. That's a partnership between Earth Day Network and Council for Green Revolution. Last year together we have done this program. We had very huge response from the children making the documentaries, especially bringing consciousness, or they themselves involved in the activities and documented the environment friendly and sustainable things, which are very much relevant to this year Earth Day theme, that is Restore Our Earth. I request Karuna Madam to about this and launch this competition today. Thank you.
I think, Dr. Reddy, we should all launch it together. It's a combined effort.
Yeah, all are there together.
All just clap our hands to launch it, since there's no virtual thing here. And thank you again on behalf of our organization for taking this forward so very beautifully. And we will, as in last year, announce it widely so that a lot of entries come in, and let children use the camera's eye to understand more about nature. Because as Einstein told his son, look deep into nature and you will understand everything. So let children have that ability to not skim through things, but look deep into nature and, film that nature. Thank you so much.
Thank you, madam. Soon I hope you will be sharing the link for this competition so that children could enroll and start making their video films. And also we do conduct some workshops so that they could learn.
Yes, those are very good. Very good workshops.
Yeah, I think this time with Ricky Cage being part of that, we could add value to the audio and music and other aspects also. Thank you, madam, once again. And now we have another event that is today, the Earth Day. We would like to bring up a kind of declaration from our side. So Dr. Donti Narasimha Reddy Garu, he is well-known environmentalist and development professional and policy analyst, and he had been working for the past more than 3 decades relentlessly on various issues nationally, internationally, and he has contributed a lot for the betterment of the society and environment, and we always get inspired by him. And he has drafted this points, and he would share this declaration points of today's this Earth Day event. Yes, I request him to speak.
So we, the participants of international webinar on Restore Our Earth, organized with the initiative of Council for Green Revolution on 22nd April 2021, having discussed the environment and development issues with the objective of restoring the Earth systems, hereby issue this declaration. So we are glad to note that USA is returning to the table to discuss positive climate action. Uh, India also needs to develop a rigorous and smart climate action plan. It is important that biggest economies, which are also the biggest causes of global pollution, are getting together with the stated objective of significantly upgrading their climate mitigating actions. So they are going to meet shortly. So among the declaration, these are the first point is since there is a great urgency created by huge levels of pollution and carbon buildup in the atmosphere, we urge all countries individually and together declare planetary climate emergency and take urgent steps to decarbonize the world economy. Second point is people's health should be a priority for all the governments given the virulence of pandemics, nutritional insecurity, food insecurity, and food contamination. I think some of the presentation by Sarojini Rangam refers to this. Third, reform food production systems on land, inland waters, and oceans to be in sync with needs of the primary food producers and food consumers. Fourth, limit access of large corporations and other financial interests in food systems. Food systems also include access to equitable use of water. Fifth, agroecological transformation that eliminates use of hazardous chemicals in food and fiber production requires support from the government. Six, afforestation, biodiversity conservation, and promotion of nature in both urban and rural areas requires immediate attention. Immediately stop mining and industrial scale exploitation in ecological areas like Eastern and Western Ghats and take effective measures to protect them. This includes the Amazon as well. Professor Purushottam Reddy was referring earlier. Eight, devise action plans through a consultative process and implement them globally, nationally, and at local levels with full decision making participation of people at all levels. Nine, chalk out a global program to phase out climate changing coal use within the year 2035 and oil and gas use before 2045. Poorer nations must be given all support to do this energy transition. All large multilateral, bilateral, and national financial institutions should be directed to invest at least 40% to address the climate crisis with equal emphasis on mitigation and adaptation. So World Bank or India International Monetary Fund, so BRICS Bank, so all of this should be made to invest at least 40% on climate crisis. As the climate crisis is largely created by unbridled consumption by the rich people, while hundreds of thousands of poor, vulnerable people suffer from its serious impacts every year, the rich people must own up their responsibility and provide reasonable reparations for these losses and damages of the poor. Earlier, Ricky Cage was mentioning Kiribati. So they are suffering because someone else is consuming more than necessary. So I think this is where we are asking for reparation. 13, democracy is fundamental key for solutions to climate emergencies. So consultative and transparent mechanisms should be in place to achieve the goals set out in climate change action plans. So people need to be consulted. It cannot be dictator or a fascist kind of methods. Equity and justice in the natural resource ownership and access have to be integrated into national public policies. Finally, implementation of action plans that are intended to achieve sustainable development goals need synchronization with climate emergency action plans. So this is a part of the declaration. I hope all of you agree with that.
And now coming to the closing thing, I request again Dr. Donti Narsam Reddy to say a vote of thanks to all of you and thanking the participants because this is a webinar, they cannot actually participate, but they had been listening to us all the time. So I request Dr. Donti Narsam Reddy.
I am a man of few words, though I write extensively. So I thank all the participants for staying through the sessions and listening patiently to all the panelists. And I thank all the panelists for giving time and energy in responding to the issues being raised by issues being faced by Earth. So on this Earth Day, I think we should all congratulate ourselves for coming together now, and I think continuously over the next few years. So I thank you all, and I hope all of you will continue with your activities today and tomorrow, specifically on Earth Day. Thank you, one and all.
Thank you very much. Now we are closing this webinar. Thanks to all of you once again.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you.
There are more such meetings in the future. Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you, Sai Bhaskar. Thank you.